For the most part, wrestlers only fight each other as part of predetermined storylines on scripted wrestling shows. Backstage, everyone is usually pretty friendly with one another. But wrestlers are humans too, and occasionally tempers flare and give way to fisticuffs. When Ken Shamrock entered the World Wrestling Federation in 1997, his victories in mixed martial arts had already earned him the nickname the world's most dangerous man. That's not exactly the kind of guy you think would get beaten up by the Nasty Boys, Brian Knobbs and Jerry Sags. But it happened, and Shamrock lost badly. Long before the UFC or WWF, Shamrock was training as a pro wrestler on the independent circuit. He says that one night he confronted the Nasty Boys in their hotel room for groping a fellow wrestler's girlfriend at a bar. One of the Nasties attacked him from behind with a phone. Then the two bigger wrestlers battered Shamrock beyond recognition. They moved on, but Shamrock never forgave or forgot. Years later, after he'd become a superstar with the Ultimate Fighting Championship, Shamrock and a few other wrestlers encountered the Nasty Boys at an airport. He confronted them and threatened to beat them senseless, knowing that this time he absolutely could. Fisticuffs didn't happen.
And he goes, "If you hit me, it's a federal offense." I was like, "That's it?"
The realization that Sags wouldn't fight him, even in front of other wrestlers, was victory enough. Smoky Mountain Wrestling is where Tracy Smothers and Dr. Tom Pritchard both made their names, but they weren't really friends. While working for the WWF in the mid-90s, the lack of friendliness exploded into an all-out brawl that almost landed them in jail. As Pritchard explained, he felt that Smothers kept legitimately hurting wrestlers when the whole point of wrestling is to, not actually do that. While traveling to a show, Smothers confronted Pritchard about this trash talk, and the two began fighting right on the side of the road. Since that's another thing you're not supposed to do, police officers arrived to break the ruckus up. Pritchard said the two were simply practicing for their upcoming wrestling match, and the cops somehow believed them and started to leave. That would have been the end of it, but before the cops left, Smothers told Pritchard that he was lucky that they were there to save him from a major beating, and the brawl was back on, until the cops threatened to take them to jail if they didn't leave. Buff Bagwell was known for his ego while he was working for World Championship Wrestling, but when he was brought into the WWF in 2001, his pride proved to be his undoing. He only worked a few matches before getting fired, but even in that brief period, he managed to get into a real-life fight. His opponent was Shane Hurricane Helms, another former WCW employee. We don't know what triggered the fight, mostly because Helms wouldn't say, but it started as a verbal altercation and quickly escalated into a physical one. Bagwell apparently attacked Helms from behind, and Helms responded by throwing a water bottle at him, which somehow resulted in Bagwell falling over, cracking his head on the pavement, and needing 20 stitches. As for Helms, his surprisingly dangerous water bottle skills earned him total respect from his peers. It's hard to imagine a brawl bigger than a fight between the Big Show and the Great Khali, two 7-foot titans who took on each other for real. Unfortunately, real life doesn't always have the drama of the ring, and according to Show, their backstage tussle was, quote, the worst friggin' fight on the planet. Show recalled the fight on an episode of Chris Jericho's podcast and revealed it was over one of Show's signature moves. He'd throw his opponent into the corner, shush the crowd, then deliver a thunderous chop to the chest with a frying pan-sized hand. When Khali started doing the same thing, Show confronted him about it, and as Jericho put it, no one would break them up because it was like King Kong taking on Godzilla. Not that anyone actually needed to break it up. The fight soon ended on its own when Show took a swing at Khali, tripped over a chair, and fell down, somehow knocking Khali over on top of him. The pile of giants then called the whole thing off. Of course, if you ask Khali, all the wrestlers took his side in the fight, and he made the Big Show cry. That's almost certainly untrue, but to be fair, it's a much better story than we both fell over. In 2006, Dave Bautista learned the hard way that acting like you're a bigger star than the people you work with is always going to cause trouble.
You just need to find a woman who is pathetic. Like you.
At the time, he was getting a huge push in WWE, but his in-ring exploits had also inflated his ego. Things peaked when Bautista declared that SmackDown had risen in ratings solely because he was on the show. Booker T, a veteran who had been main eventing for a decade at that point, confronted him about his stuck-up attitude, which devolved into a fistfight that lasted about 30 seconds. The fight didn't need to last any longer than that. While Booker suffered a black eye in the ruckus, Bautista's face was completely cut up, and his pride evaporated. It's hard to act like a big deal after getting beaten up by someone smaller and older than you. Hopefully, Bautista took those lessons into his future battles. The ones against James Bond and Thanos. Even if you prefer prestige television to pro wrestling, you probably know Awesome Kong, aka Kia Stevens, from her role on Netflix Glow. She's one of a handful of actual pro wrestlers to take a role on the show, but the drama doesn't always stop when the cameras turn off. In 2016, Kong was changing in the locker room at Total Nonstop Action when fellow wrestler Rebby Sky entered and attempted to change too. The two rarely got along, and Kong was outraged that Sky would dare change near her. She kicked Sky out of the locker room, and when Sky later returned to grab her belongings, Kong went after her, allegedly grabbing her by the throat. The worst part? Sky's young son Maxwell was nearby and watching the whole incident. Kong was released from the company shortly thereafter, but with the success she's had on Netflix, that might have been for the best.